right, our background is glued on. The glue is completely dry and we're ready to start assembling. So the easiest way to assemble a wreath and get a nice shape is to start with 4 of your branches. Doesn't really matter which ones, but I'm actually going to put the darker ones towards the back and then have the lighter ones in the front. But if you don't happen to have 4 and 4, that's totally fine. It just, it wasn't planned. I just happened to have that. But anytime you have, you know, things layered on top of each other, they tend to have the darker ones, or the back tends to be darker than the front because the light doesn't hit it quite as much. So once again, I'm only putting glue on the ends of the stem. And I'm using the same glue because it's going to dry completely matte and completely clear. So you're not going to see if any glue happens to seep out, and you can see that there's glue seeping out. There we go. So now we've got those ones done. I'm going to put these ones tucked in between. So now we can see a clear shape of the wreath. So by gently lifting them up, I'm not actually moving anything, but just tucking them right below there. And that's why we don't put glue on the whole thing. So it makes it easy to lift them up. If once you're completely done, if you wanted, you could put glue underneath parts that you thought were going to catch or whatnot. I don't. I like having bits sticking out. To me, that makes it a little bit more like a natural wreath. There we go. All right, now we've got our berries, and I'm going to do the same as the first one. I'm going to cut my berries apart. Where's my scissors? And once again, I'm cutting them at the base of the stem so I don't have a weird stem sticking out in the middle. But you can see how easy this is to put together when you have all your die cuts already prepped. And it definitely looks a lot more interesting having die cuts with different textures. So the other thing about these berries is you might not have actually noticed it. I don't have an extra of the holly leaves, but I have an extra of the berries. The berries for some reason go in a different direction from the holly, like the curve and the direction is a little bit different, which is another reason why I chose to cut them apart, because then it doesn't matter what direction the stem curves. But you can also see how having that different texture in there really gives it a lot more interest. And I chose to only use the holly and the berries for this particular one, but you could use some of the other greens. The dies that I'm using are from this set here. There's one other, the one for the last card of holly one is from a different one. They'll all be listed on the supply list, but there's a ton of choices in here. So you can mix more than what I'm doing here. I just didn't find that I really needed much more than this. As well as the fact that even though it's a lot easier when you do just a bunch of die cutting at once and then prepping those die cuts and stuff like that, you know, these cards, if you have a lot of people on your Christmas card list, you're not going to necessarily want to make a ton of these cards unless you've started way ahead of time and have a lot of time to do them. I would be sending these just to the people that you know appreciate handmade cards, the people that you know are going to keep them, because after doing this, it would be heartbreaking to know that someone tossed them. So my wreath is done. I'm just going to let that dry for a moment while I put my sentiment on here. And I'm going to grab some foam pop dots. There they are. Just so that it's a little bit raised from the back. Might as well give the sentiment dimension as well and not just have the dimension in the wreath. So I taught in-person classes at a couple scrapbook stores for 15 years. And the cards like these that had a lot of die cuts and a lot of dimension were always some favorite cards or favorite classes of people's. We'd have a lot of people sign up. The only thing is during class, they wouldn't realize how much went into each one of the cards, how much die cutting prep and that sort of thing. And even then I had done a lot of it for them just to save time in class. But they do have, there's a lot that goes into them, but they do have a great wow factor. All right, last step is I want to add a little bow on here. Now, where did I put my ribbon? I was going to say I just saw it. So I want to have a tail on my bow that I can kind of weave in behind some of the greenery, just to give it a little bit more movement. You don't necessarily need to. You can cut your tails a little bit short and just have a bow at the top. That would look great as well. Really personal preference on what you like and how you want it to look. That scissors is horrible for ribbon. There we go. All right, so ribbon doesn't necessarily like liquid glue, but because there's so much dimension here, there's not really anything for a glue dot to really stick to. So I'm going to let that dry completely. Once it's dry completely, I'll just weave the ribbon in behind some different places and stuff like that. It's going to be much easier once this is completely dried and it's not gonna, it doesn't have the chance of moving. But like I said, you could do it just a short ribbon with just a short tail, your choice. You can weave it even more within your wreath or whatnot, but you can see all the texture and dimension, and I love how the holly has a little bit of different texture than just plain cardstock. It gives it a lot more interest in my opinion.